So I used to strongly believe in the effects of education and that there is a relationship between getting more education and performing better. And as I've gotten more life experience, I realized that that relationship is very difficult to actually find. Um, And the reason is that in aggregate, across a lot of people, you can see this effect. And you can only see this effect over a very long period of time where you see that education actually matters. And it's because it works in very complicated ways that are not necessarily a one-to-one conversion. Getting Learning more about something doesn't mean that you will automatically have some sort of performance increase or that, in fact, that you can even measure that performance increase. I have become a lot more skeptical of this particular relationship, particularly as I've sort of progressed in higher education. And, I'm a lot more pessimistic, to be honest, because there's the challenge of sustaining an institution versus serving things that are adequate, serving sort of knowledge that is adequate at the current moment. And that's a really super challenging thing. And if you were to look at a university or a college or a school, you'll realize that there's a lot of different goals that are being met and being served, right? So, for example, an elementary school is as much as a daycare as it is a sort of facility to encourage people to learn a bit, right? Daycare to essentially store your kids while you go and work. Um, you know, I want you to sort of tease apart and think about that in, what does that actually mean? And for you as an individual, getting increased education doesn't necessarily mean that much. It's not going to be a conversion that you're thinking of. Um, and I've been sort of puzzling about this for a long time in terms of what does it actually mean? What is my view in terms of what has happened in my own experience and in other people, um, it's just very difficult to see any relationship in terms of learning more stuff and getting the increase that people would sort of suggest. Yes, you learn more stuff. Yes, that there are things that are interesting, sort of curious facts, but you can't tease the fact that it's very hard to tease out the fact that talented individuals would, regardless of an education, be successful in without that particular education. And I know that there's people that spend a great deal of time thinking about that, but it's hard to do that. Um, for example, it's very similar to like private school versus public education. Ultimately, there's a lot of factors that you can't control for, you can't sort of look at, and the complexity is just very difficult to look at. Um, and I've become pessimistic, um, you know, more of a realist, I guess, um, where I just acknowledge that the world is complicated and the conversion of learning a few courses and learning a few things doesn't necessarily mean that you will do well automatically. Now, what does that mean, right? So one thing is that um, some people might recommend to not get an education or be as practical as possible. Well, that's challenging in that there are many institutions that encourage you to, within a current environment, it's very challenging to sort of do that. Do I think that higher education actually means a lot in terms of the success of if more people get a higher education, does that mean that there's going to be more successful people? It's very hard to say that. Now, the reason is that for the 10,000 people that get it, there's only one that are going to benefit from that and make a significant difference from that. So from like a government level, it makes sense to encourage people to do that. From an institution level, it makes sense. They're searching for that 1 in 10,000, but for you, um, it may not work out for you in the way that you think about. And so what do you do, right? Given all of that, um, you have to be willing to just disentangle and not worry about the actual outcome. And this is part of the problem with education that we have right now, is that there is this belief that there is a one-to-one conversion. Um, and we have to step back and say, no, that is not true always. And instead of worrying about this one-to-one conversion that you're going to for every, skill development thing that you do, or um, increasing your competency in a certain area that is going to mean something, right? You take programming courses, that means something. You're going to do better with that, right? You're going to get a higher paying job and all that kind of stuff. To some degree, that occurs for some people, but for many people, it doesn't. And so you have to just acknowledge the fact that you do things for sheer enjoyment and pleasure and the hope of something to happen sometime in the future. And then that hope might not actually turn into something. The expectation may never turn into something at all. And you have to be okay with understanding that the world is just a lot more complicated than we would ever imagine it to be. Now, is that pessimistic? Does that mean that you should never try to do anything? No, right? Like what I'm saying is try to do things repeatedly, endlessly, and then hopefully at one point it actually matters from what you did. But there's many times, most times, probably 99% of the time, it's never going to matter. In fact, all of your efforts will be wasted, um, for most part, except for that one time where it actually does matter. So, and I can give you that one clear example that has happened for me. Um, I took a bunch of courses. One course that has spectacularly been important for me is learning about finance and learning about the fact that, um, the best available, the most cutting edge research that we know, almost always just suggests, and it's very simple, just invest broadly and do that within, as many of the stocks and assets as you possibly can. And in general, if you do that, then the best possible scenario is that it grows at about 10% per year. And by knowing that little fact, I've benefited tremendously. Otherwise, I probably would have flip-flopped, tried to invest in a whole bunch of scammy things, did all of the things probably incorrectly. Instead, by knowing a simple thing like that, it has made me, and saved me a lot of pain and made me a lot of sort of financial gain at the end, at on the flip side. Does that mean that any of that is not is easy to learn and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, I mean the basic principles of it is super easy to learn. Um, but the fact is, you're not going to learn until it's actually in front of your face. All right, take care. and have a wonderful day.